3 people died in the woods last summer, and I'm not sure if I can tell anyone the truth about it. Finale. A story by user Isolated Destination. In the distance, we could now all start to hear the noises again. It sounded like they might be coming closer. Okay, Stephanie said, if we fight, how exactly are we going to do that? We have no weapons. We don't need weapons, Trinity said, now slowly trying to get to her feet and start down the tree. We just need rope. Rope? Well, where would we even get that? It's much better if we stay the night here. We don't have much daylight left. Stephanie continued to argue. There's rope in the truck. Sloane said, we have a plan that involves this. Sloane reached for the sack that had been wedged under my arm. I had almost forgotten it was there. I had held onto it with a death grip the whole time running and climbing up the tree. Stephanie's face pursed in a disgusted wrinkle. What is that? It's bait, said Trinity, and we are going to use it to kill the last 2 monsters. How do you know there are only 2 left? Stephanie asked. We looked at each other. We don't really, I started, but we only saw 2 leave after Lindsay exploded. Exploded? Lindsay exploded? Stephanie demanded. Oh, yeah, sorry, yes, I replied, but that's not important right now. We have 1 shot at this and we need to do it now. Trinity is right, the creatures might not come out in the day, but that man will. We have a plan for the creatures, and we can't wait around here any longer. Stephanie looked unconvinced, terrified. I knew she wasn't too excited about trusting 3 random strange kids she just met in the forest, but we had seen things she hadn't. We knew the danger of waiting around, and we knew that the only chance we had was right now. She looked at me. Okay, let's go. We started climbing down, quietly. We reached the bottom in complete silence as Trinity looked at all of us with her finger over her lips, as if we needed a reminder not to make a sound. What about Shelby? Sloane asked. We can leave her here and come back. The noises we had heard earlier were now gone. We were stepping softly on the forest floor in the direction of the truck. Sloane heard it first and held up her hand in a stop sort of action. I didn't hear anything, and then all of a sudden I did, the sound of an engine starting. No. Our only chance. I heard Stephanie whisper more to herself than anyone. Run. She continued, leading the charge the rest of the way towards the road. We were caught off guard, but followed her. We were no longer keeping quit, but were all sprinting full speed towards the truck. We exited out of the tree line onto the road, and we could see fully the sky now for the first time. It was nearly dusk. The man was in the driver's seat of the car. He had his head turned away from our direction as he was trying to reverse out of the small embankment the truck had rolled into previously. I heard her before I saw her, Stephanie, screaming with what I can only describe as a war cry, had her fist raised in the air and flew towards the car, smashing the driver window with her bare hand, landing a clean punch into the man's face. He had barely looked her direction when her fist met his mouth, teeth flying in different directions as blood sprayed the windshield. We all stopped and stared at the scene. Is he dead? Trinity asked. Stephanie instinctively grasped her bloody hand. Fuck, that hurt. Sloane rushed towards the car door. The man was unconscious, and he rolled out onto the floor with Sloane's assistance, hitting his head on the floor as he dropped with a thump. Well, Sloane said, he probably is now. Forget the plan. Trinity shouted, get into the car, let's go. Stephanie jumped into the cab, the engine was still running. Sloane and Trinity piled onto the mound of camping gear in the truck's bed, and I ran around back and climbed into the passenger seat. Stephanie continued to reverse the car, attempting to turn it around and drive away. The road was narrow and had steep ditches leading to embankments on each side, which was making things difficult. She made a final swivel, and the truck was now facing the direction out, and we started to peel away, finally free. Sloane and Trinity cheered from the back. They were both hanging onto the top of the cab, steadying themselves as they tried to balance on all the gear. Our excitement was short-lived. Immediately as soon as we had started driving, a piercing, ear-crushing sound reverberated through the air. It was deafening, and we could feel the vibrations in our head and bodies. I instinctively cupped my ears in my hands to try and lessen the sound's impact. Stephanie did the same, tucking her head down towards her lap and pressing the brakes on the truck. Sloane and Trinity must have done the same thing, and in letting go of the top of the car, lost their balance because both of them rolled over the road and down the windshield, and onto the ground in front of the truck. Sloane! Trinity! I screamed and jumped out of the car. They were on the ground, but were both already getting to their feet. Max, Sloane started, just get back in, we need to go. She was bleeding on her arm and the side of her cheek. Trinity looked in better shape, but was struggling to stand. My ankle, I think it's broken, Trinity exclaimed. I ran to pick her up. Are you okay? Can you walk? I started to ask, but was interrupted. It's him. Look! Stephanie screamed, looking back to where we had left the man. He was lying in his back, blood coming out of his mouth, smiling. He was conscious and had one arm raised, holding his long black cane, with its antennae at the top extended. He started to laugh. He pressed something on the cane and the piercing frequency began again. My ears were ringing, the vibrations felt like they were searing my brain. You can't get out of this now, the man laughed. You think you can come here, mess with my experiments, destroy everything I put into this, and just leave? No. You're playing my game. These are my creations, and they listen to me. I'm going to make a lot of money off this and y'all aren't getting in my goddamned way. I stood in a mix of shock and disgust. This man had brought people here as some type of game. What did he mean by creations? We were just pawns as he was experimenting with developing these monsters? Training them to find and kill prey? I turned back to help Sloane and Trinity. Sloane was helping Trinity up, but I could tell that Trinity couldn't put any weight on her left leg. I ran towards them and put Trinity's other arm over my shoulder and Sloane and I acted as her crutches. We started hobbling to the car when I noticed Stephanie's face. I saw sheer terror. Her mouth was agape and her hands were on the steering wheel. She looked stunned with fear. She was not looking directly at us, but rather behind us. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to know what was behind me. I closed my eyes instead, but I felt Sloane's head jerk in the directions that Stephanie was looking. Don't move, Sloane said. I had to look. I slowly twisted my head and saw them. Two creatures. They were walking, or more like prowling towards us, both of their eyes locked on our bodies. It was now for the first time I could see how ugly they were. They had snarling, snaggling teeth, patchy fur all over their face and bodies, and grey, crusty skin. Their faces looked like a bat, with the snout of a bear. They seemed to have no ears, just tiny slits on the sides of their heads. These really were some Frankenstein creation that only a deranged maniac could concoct out of a horrible experiment. I could see their red eyes locked onto Trinity, like they could tell she was wounded. Then I saw one lift its nose like it was picking up a scent, as it looked toward the blood on Sloane's face. They were less than 100 feet away and they started picking up the pace, trotting towards us now, almost breaking into a run. I screamed. We all did. We were paralyzed with fear. We had maybe 10 seconds to run, but there was no way all three of us could make it into the car in that short of time. I was frozen. I felt the strength of Sloane's arm trying to carry Trinity and pull me at the same time towards that truck, but I knew it wouldn't work. I knew they were coming faster than we could get away. I looked at the creatures, now 50 feet away. 40, 25. They were running full speed. Their faces getting larger, their eyes locked on us. We could now hear their grunts and growls and their slobbering pants as they picked up the pace. In one instant, the creature on the left stopped, its eyes turned upwards as something large and heavy flew down from the air and hit it right in the head. The other creature noticed and stopped too. The animals looked confused. A large, bloody, body part, swaddled in sack made from a tablecloth was laying on the ground at their feet. I looked towards the truck and saw Stephanie, hands blooded from throwing the limb over 20 feet. The creature that had been struck sniffed the sack and started digging to pull the severed limb out of the linen. The other creature, in what looked like an act of jealousy, also started sniffing the bloody limb and ripped it away from it. This caused the first creatures to yelp and lunge at the other one. Soon they were in a total fighting match, ripping at each other's throats. Move! Sloane demanded, in the angriest of whispers. I started rushing back to the car and made it to the passenger seat. I loaded Trinity in, and I could hear the noises the monsters were making, growling, shredding, as they tore each other to pieces. We piled into the truck's cab. There was barely any room, but we squeezed. My plan, it worked. Trinity exclaimed, "The creatures are going to eat each other, fighting over the food." "Quick, let's go!" Stephanie shouted as she pressed on the gas. "But what about Shelby?" Trinity exclaimed, "and where did Stephanie go?" I looked over to the driver's seat and realized Stephanie was gone. But before anyone could answer, we were startled from a loud bang. In front of us in the middle of the road was a pool of blood, and a few remaining chunks of one of the monsters. The other one had jumped on top of the hood of the truck, and was looking through the window right at us. "Oh shit," Trinity whispered, "I guess I didn't calculate the math correctly. I told you wouldn't get away." The man, who was still laying on the ground, yelled. He was laughing and coughing as he tried to roll himself over to stand. I looked through my side mirror, and saw Stephanie, crouching along the side of the car. The man was on his knees, still trying to stand. The creature was still looking at us, calculating a way to get in. It reached its long clawed arm around and into the broken driver's seat window. There was no room to get out of its way. We were all three crammed inside, as it reached into the cab for someone, to grab. At that moment Stephanie lunged at the man. She picked up his staff from the ground and smashed it over his back. The man yelped at the pain, as Stephanie swung again, this time hitting him in the head, and he collapsed to the floor. The antenna at the top of the cane shattered, and blood pooled from the man's head onto the floor. Before we could even think to act, the creature noticed the commotion from behind the truck. It began to sniff the air, and in an instant, jumped clear over the truck, landing on the ground behind us. Stephanie had already crouched behind the side of the truck, and started to make her way back into the driver's seat. She opened the door and quickly climbed in. All we heard was a scream, followed by the words, "No, you can't. I am your master." Through the review side mirror I could see the monster devouring the face of the man. As I watched, I felt the car shift into reverse, heading straight for the creature and the man. We heard a loud crunching sound with an even louder whimper, and Stephanie rolled the truck over the both bodies 3 more times just to make sure. It was done. We walked back into the woods, where we had left Shelby. She was hot to the touch and needed to get to a hospital immediately. The next few hours were a blur. I remember driving down a dark road for what felt like eternity. I was in and out of consciousness, trying to stay awake while 5 of us were crammed in the truck. I remember falling asleep and waking up at the hospital where my parents met us. I remember the bright lights of the emergency room and the shock of realizing we were all alive. I remember being pulled into a room and asked a lot of questions. I remember getting an IV because I was severely dehydrated and delirious. I remember being questioned by doctors, by nurses, by police, that asked me over and over about a wolf attacking my aunt. Apparently, in our dehydrated and delirious state, we had told authorities that we had been attacked by a monkey wolf, and they had only really paid attention to the wolf part. One interview stands out in my memory, even though it's foggy. It was before I even spoke to any of the doctors, or before the police arrived. I remember being asked by a nurse to leave my hospital bed, and being pulled into a small, windowless room. What I'm guessing was a storage closet based on the random assortment of mops, buckets, and piles of scrubs. I was exhausted, and sitting at a makeshift table, across from 2 women in black suits. They had expressionless faces, and each had a laptop and a folder in front of them, and were furiously typing notes before I sat down. "Hello," started the taller woman, "my name is Agent Ash, this is my partner Agent Court. What can you tell us about your experience in the woods?" I told them everything. I described in as much detail everything that had happened, but I was so drowsy I don't fully remember what I said. They had a lot of follow-up questions, and never stopped typing the entire time. I remember they left without saying anything to me. After a few minutes of being in the room alone, a nurse came in and brought me back to my hospital bed, and I fell asleep. We all recovered at the hospital for what I think was 3 or 4 days. When Shelby was treated for her wounds, her official medical record stated that had been attacked by a wolf while camping with 3 relatives under 18. Suffering from hypothermia, polymicrobial infection, intense swelling, and incoherence. While we were in the hospital, our story was on the news, but it was sensationalized and completely misunderstood. Reporters described a harrowing account of 3 kids saving their aunt from a wolf attack, and survived overnight in the woods alone, without so much as calling us to find the truth of what happened. After about a week's, when we were nearly recovered, and home, I tried calling every station to explain what happened. No one was interested, and no one believed me. Every single news station that had reported on it refused to listen to me, and every internet article that I could find on us had the comments disabled, and wouldn't respond to my emails. I tried, but could not find out what had happened to Stephanie. I tried looking her up a million times, or any of the other people that had died out there, but just hit dead ends. The medical report said that were taken into the emergency room only accompanied by a female adult relative. I tried talking to Shelby about it, but she doesn't remember anything. She was in a fever state for 2 days, and has no recall about what happened. I have talked to my parents about all this, the man, the creatures, the flying monkey wolves, the high-frequency cane that controlled them, and how we met a person who exploded trying to save us, and how it was another person we met that drove us out of there. They made me see a therapist, and talked about putting me in a home to help me heal. I gave up mentioning things to them after that. I talked to Sloan and Trinity about it, and their parents had the same reaction. No one believed us. No one took us serious. I guess I am writing this all here because I really don't know who else to tell. I've thought about going back there, looking for something, some proof, anything to show we are telling the truth, but I just can't bring myself to do it. But one thing I know for sure, it's all absolutely real. It all happened. 3 people died in the woods last summer, and I'm not sure if I can tell anyone the truth about it.
That is the final part of this story. We thank user Isolated Destination of No Sleep subreddit for their bone-chilling story of experimented creatures, designed by a man living in the woods, told by one of the survivors of the incident, Max. We also thank you, our avid viewers, for tuning in on this story and your utmost support for this channel, The Double Dutchman. We'll make sure to give you the best stories out there and share them with you. To continue your undying support, I kindly ask you to subscribe to this channel, share it, and turn on the notification bell so you can have all the updates coming from us. And also, I kindly ask you to like this video and share it to your friends who might enjoy them, and comment down below on what you think about the story. That's all for now. This is the Double Dutchman, and until our next story, we'll see you there.